In this tutorial, I demonstrate how to move a WordPress website from a remote host like SiteGround or Bluehost to a local server such as Bitnami or MAMP or WAMP. The process basically involves installing a backup application or plugin, creating a backup, and then restoring that backup to a new location. In this case, it'll be a folder on a local server, on a local computer. First, visit the front end of the website that you want to move and make sure that everything is working. All the links are working, all the widgets are in the right place, all the plugins and extensions are working, and the theme is intact. Then go to the dashboard and install Akeeba Backup in the plugins area. If you don't already have Akeeba, see one of my other video tutorials for where to locate and install Akeeba. Go to the Akeeba part of the dashboard, click on Backup Now to create a backup. Then go to Manage Backups and make sure that the backup is status OK with a green box there. This is a full backup, 25 megabytes. Now what you want to do is visit your CPanel of your web host. Most professional web hosting companies use the same CPanel, so this will probably look very similar to your CPanel. This happens to be on my SiteGround host. But go to the Files area, click on the File Manager, select Web Root Public, press Go. This will show you all the folders and files on your web host. This particular website was called WordPress 1, so double-click on the folder icon for the name of the WordPress website that you backed up. Go to the WP Content folder and double-click on it. Double-click on the Plugins folder. That's a plugin that we installed to do the backup. And then the backup plugin is called Akeeba Backup Core. Double-click on that folder. Your backup is going to be held in the App folder, in the Backups folders. So quite a deep folder structure, but this is where you're going to find your backup file, which will be a JPA file. Notice that the size here is 25 megabytes. Once this is selected, then click on the Download icon right here. Press that to download this to your Downloads folder. This is a very large file, so it might take a few minutes to download. You could also use an FTP program. Probably better to use an FTP program, but to keep this tutorial simple, I'll assume that you already know how to use an FTP program, or perhaps you don't know how to use one. So in this case, you can use the file manager that came with your web hosting provider. Once the file is downloaded, go ahead and find the file in your OS. In this case, it's in my Downloads folder. Let's go ahead and hide Safari. And now what you want to do is find the location of your local server. That's going to be on the Macintosh. That's going to be in the Applications folder. And then look for either Bitnami, WordPress Stack, or MAMP Stack, or WAMP Stack. In my case, my local server that I'm going to move this website to is MAMP Stack. And then inside of this folder, you have a variety of folders. The one you want to find is Apache 2. Open that up by double-clicking on it. Double-click on htdocs. And then right here, you want to create a folder where you want to move your WordPress website. This is your root folder, htdocs. I don't recommend putting the WordPress site here, because if you have problems, you'll clutter up your root folder. Instead, create another folder. I already have a folder here called Backup with another backup in there. So let's just do New Folder, and we'll do Backup 2. Now what you want to do is inside of this Backup 2 folder, you want to place the JPA file that you just downloaded to your Downloads area of your computer, or wherever it downloaded. Drag that into your Backup 2 folder. And then you want to get another file called kickstart.php. You'll get this from the Akeeba website. The quickest and easiest way to find this needed kickstart.php file is to visit Google and do a search for Akeeba kickstart.php download or something similar. And here in the results page, click on the download Akeeba kickstart.html, or something labeled in a similar way. That'll take you to this page. Skip the subscribe button for now, although if you find that Akeeba Kickstart and Akeeba Backup Core for WordPress works really well for you, I definitely recommend that you do subscribe. Click on the Take Me to the Downloads for this version. And then again, skip the subscribe button and go directly to the Kickstart Core Download Now button. Click on that. This will download the file to your specified downloads directory, which in my case is here. So this says Kickstart Core 3. If this is a zip file, unzip it, and then inside of that unzipped folder, there's a bunch of INI files, but in the middle there will be a file called kickstart.php. So I'm going to now remove this from the downloads folder onto my desktop. And then from the desktop, I'm going to now move that kickstart.php file into my backup 2 folder that I created earlier. And inside of that folder is the JPA backup file. So those are the 2 files you'll need to restore your WordPress website to any location. In this example, I'm demonstrating how to transfer it from your remote host to a local server. But you could also move this between one host and another host, or between one area of your local server and another area. So once you have both files in the right location where you want to restore your WordPress website, you're now ready to start up your local server. So if you're running MAMP or WAMP, start those servers. I'm running a Bitnami MAMP stack, and what's great about Bitnami is that they provide a handy manager, OS manager. I can open up that manager, click on Manage Servers, and make sure that my servers are running. So whatever system you're using, make sure your servers are running. And then what's also nice about this manager is it has a welcome screen, and if you click on Open PHPMyAdmin, it'll open up PHPMyAdmin in your server, but also give you the server address. In my case, it's 127.0.0.1:8080. Yours may be different. If you're using a Bitnami stack, however, you can open up the PHPMyAdmin, and then you'll remember that I created my backup folder in the same folder as PHPMyAdmin. So now all I have to do is append to the end of that address backup to, and now kickstart.php, because what we want to do is we want to execute that PHP file, and that will then start the extraction and restore through a series of steps my WordPress website. So there's my address, backup to kickstart.php, appended to the end of my server address, and that'll take you to this screen right here. So you want to read through this screen. If you see this screen, then you know that your address is correct. One common error is if you don't get that address to your local server correctly, you won't get to this page. So read through the instructions, click on the escape here. That'll take you to the Akeeba Kickstart Core. At the time of this recording, I was using version 3.8.0. And what I also like about putting the JPA file in the same folder as the kickstart.php file is it will find that file for you. You can actually import it from a URL, but I think it's safer to actually just put it right in there with the folder. Next, in the Write to File section, choose Directly, since both files are there in the same folder. You don't need to use FTP. And now go ahead and start to extract the files. Don't close this window while the extraction is in process. And then after that's extracted, go ahead and run the installer. Click on Run the Installer button. And that'll take you to this screen. It will initiate your restore. So the first thing you want to do is a pre-installation check. Now, one nice thing also about running a Bitnami server is that Akeeba Backup works great with Bitnami servers. So I've already done this many times, and I know that all the configurations here are correct. On the recommended settings, these should be green, but they don't have to be. As long as everything is green on this side, don't worry about it too much unless you have errors. Go ahead and click on the Next button in the upper right-hand corner, and now you're ready to restore the site's main database. And to do this, you're going to need to create a new database on your local server using PHPMyAdmin. So go ahead and browse to the location of your PHPMyAdmin. Again, if you're using a Bitnami web server, you can just go to the manager and click on Open PHPMyAdmin, and that'll take you to this screen. Now, one tricky aspect of using PHPMyAdmin on a local server is that when you access it, it's going to ask you for a username. And you may have forgotten, but the username for PHPMyAdmin is root. That's kind of hidden in the documentation for Bitnami and for other servers. But go ahead and type root for the username. Enter the password that you entered when you set up your local web server, and press go. And that'll take you to this screen. Click on the Databases tab. And then in the Create Database, go ahead and add a database name. I'm going to give this the same name as my backup folder. Again, this is going to be restored on my local computer, so there's not a lot of security risks. But if you are putting this up to your host, going the opposite way, restoring a local website to one hosted on a remote server, you probably want to be more careful with the names and security. So go ahead and enter in a database name, write that down, click on the Create button. Database Backup 2 has been created. Then go to the Users tab, and you want to add a user. You can also do this. You can also click on Add a User, and then down here, Create Database with the same name and grant all privileges. That's actually easier than what I'm showing you here, but I kind of want to go through each stage to show you what's going on here in terms of what's needed to restore the WordPress website. So go ahead and provide a username and write that down. Host is going to be localhost. Enter a password, retype the password, and be sure to write down that password. And then down here, make sure that you check all here, put a check next to check all, so that you're granting all privileges to that new user. So the idea here is you need to create a new database, create a user on that database, provide a password, and then give the restoration program kickstart.php access or information to access that new database through the user. So once you have checked all privileges, at the very bottom of the screen, way down here on the right, click on the Go button. So I've added a new user. So I now have a database, a user on that database, and a password. Now we're ready to go back to Akeeba Kickstart. That'll be ANGIE, the ANGIE program. Here to the restoration of the site's main database. The database type is MySQL. The database server host name is always localhost. The username, enter in the username that you just created and you wrote down. Password, likewise, go to your notes. Database name. I'll typically use the same username and database name just to keep things straight when restoring on a local computer which doesn't have any security issues, but then I'll mix these up when I actually restore my website to my host that's connected to the internet. Here in the advanced options, go ahead and leave everything to the default, as well as in the fine-tuning down here. Now, if something doesn't work here and you read through the help documentation for problems, you may be directed to change some of the fine-tuning, advanced options, or other default settings. But for now, just leave the default and click on Next. If you've put in the right database, username, and password, then you'll get a successful completion and database restoration. And then click on the green Next Step button. Site parameters, put a site name. So this is going to be Backup 2 WordPress Teaching Site. Tagline. WordPress address URL and site address URL, you may have issues here. So I'm going to leave the default again, but if you run into problems such as missing files, or maybe the templates are missing or the themes are missing, you may be directed to put something different in there as well. So I'll just point that out for now. Database character set, you might want to jot that down. Database collation, just leave that blank. Under super user settings, this is another area where many people make a mistake. You need to remember this is going to be your admin access to the dashboard, to the back end of your WordPress website. So again, write down this password. This is a different password than the database password. You'll only need the database password if you need to access the database through PHPMyAdmin. You're going to use this super user admin account every time you want to work on your WordPress website. So jot down that information, enter in your email address. That's really not that critical unless, again, you're restoring to your hosted site, and this will be your final website. So double check that everything is okay here. Click on Next, and it's finalizing the restoration. That takes you to this final finished page where there's some very good documentation here on the page, including read this documentation page if you're not quite sure what to do next, as well as a link here for troubleshooting tips. It says here, even though your site has been successfully restored, differences in server configuration over time or between different servers of the same or different host can cause issues with your restored site. So you may have followed my instructions perfectly, but it's still not working. So try clicking on that link as well as reading the documentation page. Now there's two ways to proceed from here. You can either just click on the Remove the Installation Directory, which is a security precaution to make sure that no one can get into your site. So your site won't run until you remove the installation directory, which that button will do for you. So if you click on that button, that'll remove the installation directory. And now all you need to do is go back to the ANGIE page or Just now type in the address of the local address of your new website. In my case, it's 127.0.0.1:8080/backup2. And hopefully what we'll see here is my restored website. And what you want to do is make sure that it looks identical and behaves identical to the original. That's why the very first step I had you do is check to make sure that your original website was working perfectly. And this should be an exact clone of that website. So check the front end, and then also check the back end by appending to the end of your address WP-admin. And you should be able to get into the back end part of it. You'll need to get the username here, the admin username and password that you wrote down earlier. So double check that you can actually get into the back end. If you can't get into the back end, or perhaps the password isn't working, that's usually a sign that the restoration didn't work completely correctly. So you may need to delete this restoration and try it again. So there you have a very detailed step-by-step demonstration on how to use Akeeba Backup Core for WordPress to back up and restore your website from your remote host to a local server.